Good morning, everyone. My name is Travis Voiles. I'm the Vice Chairman of the ACHP, and I'm calling this meeting of the Council to order. We do have a quorum, and I am appointing Ashley Fry, our Director of Office of External Engagement, as recorder for the meeting. I just want to take a moment and welcome all our members to this first business meeting of 2026. I really appreciate the work that the ACHP staff have done to get us all together here, all nice and tight and friendly. So hopefully you like your neighbor, and we all took a shower this morning. So, but just thank you, particularly to Reed and Kelly and their teams, and Ashley and her teams for putting this on. It's no easy feat to get everyone together in a room and let us conduct our business. I also appreciate them for finding us this location at Arlo today. The reception last night with the members was an amazing opportunity to further get to know each other. Many times, for many of us, it was the first time meeting in person, and it was just the start of I think, a great relationship for this council in getting to work. We are not live streaming today, but an audio recording will be quickly posted on our YouTube page, and per previous council protocol, it will be posted as soon as possible. It's my hope that we'll get back to live streaming for future meetings as we go through our resource allocations. So at this time, I'll ask Ashley to do a quick roll call and ask her to state any proxies that are currently being held.
Thank you. So when I call your name, if you could just state that you are present for me. Vice Chairman Voiles.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Booz.
Present.
Councilmember Margaret Everson.
Present.
Councilmember Jamie Gardner.
Present.
Councilmember Rick Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Marek String.
Present.
Councilmember Kyle Scherer.
Present.
Councilmember John Tsuda.
Present.
Emmy Adamas, designee for Governor Jeff Landry.
Present.
The Honorable Mayor Robert Simison.
Present.
Joseph Imamura for the Architect of the Capitol.
Present.
The Honorable Catherine Scarlett for the Council on Environmental Quality.
Present.
Do we have anyone from Department of Agriculture? Okay. Department of Homeland Security. Brian Horn for the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Present.
Aaron Calkins for the Department of the Interior.
Present.
Anyone from Department of Transportation? John Thomas for the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Present.
Kristen Thomasgard for the Department of War.
Present.
General Services Administration. Ira Matt for NAFPO.
Present.
Ann Rains for Nick Shippo.
Present.
And Carol Quillen for the National Trust.
Present.
Thank you, Ashley. At this point, we would like to adopt the agenda that was presented for this meeting book. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda that was presented for you.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Simple voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any noes?
Motion carries.
Motion carries. At ACHP's last business meeting that was held in November of 2024, and we need to adopt the minutes from that agenda that was presented to you in your materials as well. So I will ask for a motion to adopt those minutes.
So moved.
So moved. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we would like to move on to the first agenda item, and that is a report from myself. As I said earlier, I just welcome all of our new members, all of our new representation from our other agencies throughout the executive branch to our first meeting for 2026. For those that do not know me, my name is Travis Voiles. I was appointed by the president on the council earlier last year, and am serving as the vice chairman. I currently serve at the EPA in a senior leadership role, but for the previous 3 years prior to that, I served as the Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources for the Commonwealth of Virginia, particularly overseeing the Department of Historic Resources there, the SHPO. I am privileged to serve in this role and to have the ability to work with all of y'all, working with the White House over the past year to make the appointments that the president did was a great honor, and I am happy to have y'all all here in one place and the amazing attendance that we have today. Since many of you are new members, many of you are new representations for your agencies, I do want to allow the ability for us to go around the table and just put names to faces and do a quick time to have each new member introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role. So I actually will start with the ACHP staff sitting here at the table with me, so you all know the faces behind the many, many emails that you get, and more to come, but I'll start with Reed.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Reed Nelson. I'm the Executive Director here at the Advisory Council. It's good to see you.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Finizzo. I'm the General Counsel at the Advisory Council, and I apologize in advance for all the emails you get from me.
And I'm Ashley Fry. I'm the Director of the Office of External Engagement at the ACHP.
Good morning, Kristen Thomasgard. I'm the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Environmental Management and Restoration within the Office of the Secretary of War.
Robert Simison, Mayor of Meridian, Idaho, just because that's already come up once, not Mississippi or Texas or other places. And my second time serving on the Advisory Council.
Good morning. My name is Ann Rains. I am the Deputy Director of the Maryland Historical Trust, the Deputy SHPO for Maryland, and coming up on 1 year as President of the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers.
Good morning. I'm Ann Walker from Colorado, yay, Western states. And I'm delighted to be here as an observer for the Preserve America Youth Summit, and have previously served as an expert, having been a professional preservationist for a very, very long time.
Good morning. My name is John Thomas. I'm with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm the Associate Executive Director for the Office of Real Property in Construction and Facilities Management. Thank you.
Good morning. Aaron Calkins. I'm Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks at the Department of Interior.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Bowes, longtime Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Citizens United. I'm a representative of the general public.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Paul. I'm Executive Director of the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, or NAPC. We're an observer to the Council and on behalf of local commissions and communities and certified local governments. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. John Tasuda. I've been appointed by the President to serve in the statutory member for tribal representation on that committee. I'm a member of the Kiowa Tribe of Oklahoma. And just to add a personal note, this work is very close and near and dear to my heart. I enjoy reading the Department of War because on my reservation in Oklahoma is Fort Sill, which is a significant component of part of the discussion from the Department of War. And I have actually ancestors that are buried there. So again, it's very near and dear to my heart. I'm really excited to be a part of this. Thank you.
Good morning, Patrice Fry with Repurpose Capital. We reinvest in older and historic projects. I serve as an observer to the council.
Hest Aramat Louis Quest Exchange, Ichin Hest. So good morning, everybody. My name's Ira Matt. How are you guys doing? I'm doing good. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, and I'm the Executive Director for the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers. I specifically serve in overseeing Indigenous diplomacy and federal relations. Happy to be here today as a former staff member of the Advisory Council, as a former TIPO, and I'm excited to see some of the new faces, Mr. Tsuda. Sure, I think we have great tribal representation at a great time that Mr. Voiles is leading us into a new era. And I do just want to note that I am sitting in on behalf of NATHPO's chair, Lakota Hobia, and on behalf of our vice chair, who Lakota is out on maternity leave, and Buffy is actually busy right now. This was overlapped with NCAI, with CalTIPO, so there was a number of significant tribal events happening at this time. And I just want to remind folks that moving forward, best opportunities to try to schedule these when tribal leadership isn't previously engaged in other activities. But aside from that, excited to be here. Lamesh. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Emily Dominich. I serve as the Executive Director for the Federal Permitting Council. It's good to see some familiar faces here today and excited to serve in our observer role here with the council. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm John Fowler. I'm the chair of the ACHP Foundation, which has a unique relationship with the ACHP. It was formed to support the work of the ACHP, and it is a link to the alumni from the Advisory Council. And I used to work at the council.
Yeah, good morning. Margaret Everson. I was appointed by the president as an expert member of the council. I previously served in roles at the Department of the Interior, including with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Park Service. Thank you so much for having me.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Gardner from Colorado. I am serving as a general public member and have been, we'll call it ACHP adjacent, as a consultant in energy and natural resources for about 25 years, before which I served in several roles at the Department of Interior.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Quillen. I'm president of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and really privileged to be here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Horn. I'm a recovering attorney, and I have, in my present position, I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office of Grant Programs at HUD. Prior to that, I served as the Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development in Virginia. And like my new friend Carol, I'm very pleased to be here and looking forward to the meeting today.
Good morning. Great to be with all of you today. Marek String, I'm a representative of the general public. I'm an attorney in Washington, D.C., and previously had several different roles at the Department of State.
Good morning. My name is Rick Gonzalez, and I'm thankful to the President for appointing me a second time, 45 and 47. I've been a preservation architect for 40 years in Florida, and yes, we do have historic buildings in Florida. My firm is REG Architects, and also for 16 years I've been on the Florida Historical Commission, and I am the architect of the National Review Board too. Happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Emmy Adamas. I'm the governor of Louisiana's designee, and that's Governor Jeff Landry.
Good morning, everyone. Kyle Shearer. I'm an expert member of the ACHP. I'm a partner at Venable, a law firm here in DC, in the Environment and Natural Resources Group. I co-chair their Native American law and policy practice as well. Previously served at CEQ and DOI in Trump 45, was previously, prior to that, at the Department of Justice, and sort of as an additional duty more recently, I'm a trustee for the National Museum of the American Indian, where I am on the appeals committee for repatriation efforts.
Hi, everyone. Catherine Scarlett. I'm the chairman of the Council on Environmental Quality. Kyle and I didn't overlap at CEQ in 45, but that was where I spent most of my time in that administration. Also worked at the Permitting Council, where Emily is the head of now. So looking forward to this meeting. Thank you.
Great.
I'll round us out. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Imamura. I'm the special delegate of the Architect of the Capitol. I represent the architect and the agency on various boards, commissions, and councils. It's nice to see some new and familiar faces this morning.
Thank you all, and thank you again for your willingness to serve. Many of you are giving time out of your day, and I know it's no small feat to prepare for these meetings, prepare for the work, so just a great amount of appreciation for me and the administration to each one of you. I do want to make a small comment on the status of the full-time chair. Please continue to call me vice chair. That's what I am. I do not intend to seek the role of chair, but as the White House and the president determine the status on a nominee, no nominee has been put forth by the president at this time, but we will continue to work with the White House. And in the interim, I am more than willing to act as the chair with great support from the ACHP staff. So with that, we will turn to the next item in the agenda of key priorities. So I just wanted to take a quick amount of time here to run through some of the activities that some of you new members have missed out on, but you will hear a lot about today. And then just talk about what is to come in the coming years for your service. So as I mentioned earlier, we work closely with the White House on the appointments to get us almost to full membership. Very happy about that and very happy about the ability to move forward. We've worked closely with the ACHP staff, led by Reed here, on the efforts to streamline this agency, operations, budget, staffing. As you've seen across the administration, ACHP has done an amazing job of assessing their needs and really looking at what the agency structure needs to be moving forward. We've worked with the administration as well to tee up the 2 regulations that you will hear about later on that are up for rescission. And we will continue working with the administration to consider updates to the Section 106 regulations as part of our overall review to streamline permitting and environmental review regulatory programs. Looking ahead, obviously we have a packed agenda ahead of us today, but working with staff, I know that there will be a lot more important work. Many of that is already being discussed and engaged, many of the federal agencies here, and will eventually make it to the council. I will continue to work with you on the Section 106 regulations update to improve and modernize them. We are also looking at ways to advance the use of digital tools to inform project planning and the Section 106 reviews that occur. Reed will highlight this later on in the agenda. And of course, along with the rest of the administration and our country, we will expand and highlight support for the efforts to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country and show how historic preservation effectively helps tell the story of America. I would note that staff have provided a brief summary of that plan in the meeting materials that you received today, but they're, I'm sure, more than willing to talk about it further. We'll move on now to the third item, council organization. I anticipate us being in a position to hold regular meetings going forward, but I wanted to take a minute to look at the organization of the council and the representation on it. The urgency of the business of the council is required, and it requires the ability of the council members to come together and address those sensitive issues of importance. However, in the past, ACHP has often preceded business with meetings of its 3 standing committees. So I will ask Reed to go through those with you and summarize the 3 current committees and their general charters. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yeah, for those of you who have been regular attendees for a while, you know these committees, but I know there are quite a few new faces here as well. So wanted to just quickly summarize the three standing committees as they are. First, we have the Regulations and Governance Committee, which is, I think, probably our largest subcommittee, if you will, or standing committee. That committee is principally responsible for looking at and advising the members on Section 106 regulation issues, related policy, guidance, program alternatives, like we'll be discussing later today given the Army's request, and sort of related matters. It's also charged with advising the broader membership on sort of operating procedures and internal procedures, if you will. Not so long ago, there were some amendments to our operating procedures, and that committee sort of helped sort that process out. And of course, it also is there to address other related Section 106 issues as they come up, occasional terminations, council comments, things like that. The second committee is the Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee. It's charged with developing and commenting on sort of non-Section 106 related policy, housing, climate change, transportation, other things like that. It's really worked to develop a lot of policy in the last 4 or 5 or 6 years. It's also the committee that works most closely or looks most closely at legislation that has the potential for impacts to historic properties, and advises the broader membership on whether the council should comment on legislation. So since we have met, I think you all are aware that the ACHP staff has undergone substantial changes in the last year. And I'm not going to detail those changes here, other than to say that in the last year, we've gone from a staff of about 40 to a staff of 17. We also, and talk about small agencies, I don't think we even qualify to be considered a small agency. I think we're somewhere between the micro and the tiny. But I just wanted to also acknowledge that we do have 9 additional staff that are with us through partnerships with other federal agencies. Some of those partners are here around the table with us. And some of those partnerships will be sunsetting this year, so I think you're going to expect many or maybe most of those 9 folks to their positions to come to a conclusion this year as well. I appreciate those of you who were able to join us for the informal tour that we provided yesterday of our office spaces, and just to remind you, they're just right over there. They're in the National Building Museum. And I just want to acknowledge that the staff has also physically reorganized. We're now in what had been just the west side of our original office space. We've reduced the office space by about 50%. And so please, at any time you're interested in coming over to see us and visiting, please do so. We've got a table to set you at, and and to give you some space if you need it. Also just want to acknowledge that the staff itself went through some reorganization. As you can imagine, going from 40 to 17, it sort of causes you to look at the way you've organized the overall structure of the staff. We've gone from a previous 7 offices to 5 offices. I guess perhaps the most impactful part of that reorganization that I'll mention is that we, as I said, went from 7 to 5 offices by combining the offices of Preservation Initiatives, Communication, Education, and Outreach, and Tribal and Indigenous Peoples into one new office of External Engagement. Ashley Fry is the head of that office. So as you might imagine, we've gone through some transition and some shrinking pains, if you will, although I'm really impressed and proud of the staff for adapting to what I think was a lot of change in a short amount of time. And I will tell you that I think we are well positioned to continue supporting the work of this council and moving forward on important initiatives. I also just want to acknowledge that the meeting book material does have an organizational chart. If you want to take a look at that, it gives you sort of a snapshot of who we are and how we're organized. And then lastly, sort of on a somewhat related matter, I wanted to just acknowledge that The update in the meeting book that was provided, I think sort of near the end of the meeting book on other issues, does include a brief update on the status of our efforts to implement the program comment that this council issued in December of 2024. That was the program comment on certain housing, building, and transportation projects. I'm acknowledging that to you today because one part of that program comment required that the staff update you periodically on how it's working. We have received annual reports from those agencies who have used it. There have been a few, not many, but just a few. And we will be consulting stakeholders on their experience in using it and hopefully providing a fuller report to you on how things are working by the summer. So that's my report, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thanks, Reed. We will move on to the next agenda item here, the strategic plan. Every agency is required to establish and operate under a strategic plan that's developed every 4 years, with minor updates in between. New plans are typically adopted about a year into each new administration, which means that plans are essentially due now. For those of you who are new to the member table, rest assured that we have been working on this for the better part of last year, and we are now hopefully ready to adopt a new plan. Because many of you were not here in the early stages of that effort, I would like to call on Ashley here to summarize the plan that was provided to you in your meeting book. I will also ask Ashley to update us on the recent interactions with OMB on the plan, and she'll provide an opportunity to make any final adjustments recommended by the members or answer any questions. So Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Voiles. So you each have in your binders copies of the strategic plan, and I'm also going to pull it up here to project on the screen for everyone to see in case there are real-time edits that need to be made to it. I have not used this laptop before, so please bear with me. Okay. So, as was mentioned by Vice Chairman Voiles, ACHP staff have worked with members and OMB since spring of 2025 to develop the goals and objectives that are in the draft strategic plan. The goal in the drafting process was to ensure the plan reflects the priorities and goals of the administration, as well as the statutory requirements of the National Historic Preservation Act, or NHPA. The plan is purposefully high level to allow for maximum flexibility for new and future members, as well as emerging administration priorities that may come up over the next few years. But you can see that each strategic goal cites to the distinct relevant provisions of the NHPA. So we've tied each goal back to our statutory responsibilities. The first strategic goal addresses the ACHP's responsibilities under Section 106 of the NHPA. Strategic Goal 2 speaks to our responsibilities to general education and outreach regarding the national importance of historic preservation. Strategic Goal 3 focuses on our statutory responsibilities to advise Congress and the executive branch on policies and programs that support and encourage historic preservation. And finally, Strategic Goal 4 addresses effective management and use of agency resources. During the drafting of the plan that began in spring of 2025, the ACHP staff received comments from members on the overarching strategic goals. So there's 4 specific goals that I just outlined. Core components of the ACHP's plan were submitted to OMB in August of 2025, and we did not receive any substantive comments from OMB on those core components. In early fall of 2025, ACHP staff developed and provided members with a draft of the strategic plan that included detailed strategic objectives along with implementation strategies. So the strategic objectives are the ones that are labeled as A, B, C, D, and the implementation strategies are the ones under that, tabbed in under that, that are numbered and italicized.
Again, ACHP staff evaluated and incorporated member edits and then provided the draft strategic plan to OMB on December 9th, 2025. The ACHP did receive substantive edits from OMB on 2 strategic objectives related to the collection of applicant data from federal agencies and 1 comment on regulatory review. We addressed those edits and incorporated other changes that OMB suggested in the draft that was provided to all members. I do want to draw your attention to 2 edits in red on your, both the paper copy and this copy. They were changes that were made after the original or the first meeting book was sent out. So under Strategic Goal 1, Objective B3, you'll see that traditional knowledge, as it was before, was changed to Indigenous knowledge to maintain accurate and consistent language with ACHP policies. And then, sorry about that. The next one is under Strategic Goal 2, Objective B2, the ACHP Foundation suggested including emerging professionals alongside students and interns to broaden the universe of next generation historic preservationists with whom we work. So I've added that here. I've added brackets. It's very small on the screen, apologies, but the brackets just show that the ACHP Foundation were the ones who submitted the edit. So the document is open if members have suggestions for textual edits. I'll note those in the same way that I did the ACHP Foundation's edits, but I'm also happy to answer any member questions.
Any questions or comments for Ashley?
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for the drafting of what I think is a very thoughtful plan. I did have one question. I know that you all have been working on this, it sounds like for the better part, or just over a year. You've also had, as Reed mentioned, some significant staffing changes. Does the plan that we are reviewing reflect those changes from 40 to 17 staff members, for example? Or are there things in this plan that might need additional review as you look at the staff and then the implementation of the staffing plan moving forward? Thank you.
Sure, thank you for your question. We did draft the plan with the knowledge and intent of having the smaller staff. So it does reflect what we believe we're able to accomplish with the staff that we have after that.
Great, thank you. And does it reflect the new budget realities as well?
It does, yes.
Thank you.
Actually, I just want to say thank you guys for this effort. The plan's great, and with the challenges you had, you've done a good job. And in particular, they seem like small changes, but even getting that language consistency with Indigenous knowledge from traditional knowledge, when you're working externally with folks who aren't familiar, working with tribes or what Indigenous knowledge is, keeping it as consistent and as clear as possible is a significant improvement there. So Lemnep, thank you, Ashley. And I also want to say from the tribal side, the language at the foundation spearheaded around emerging professionals and then the internship and similar. This is something we've done a lot during my time here at the Advisory Council and externally. A lot of tribal professionals are not always interns when they pursue a lot of these career paths, and they made themselves not even go to school to do this. They could be cultural experts in other arenas. So having emerging professionals is a great opportunity to make sure that it's more representative of the different dynamics that other cultural groups, in particular Indian tribes and Native Hawaiians, are working through. And we had a lot of success here at the Advisory Council working with, quote, emerging professionals when we were advancing a lot of our coordination with tribal interns and emerging professionals. They did great work working with the White House Council on Native American Affairs, working on the policy, and several of those have actually gone on to college as a result of these efforts, gone on to their masters, and one of them I believe Dominic LaForge is going to be moving in to pursue his law degree. So the ability for the advisory council to make sure that it's open seems small, these language changes, but they can have significant impacts for Indian country. So I want to say lemlemsh, and thank you for this.
Thanks, Ira. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Robert Simpson from Meridian. I thought this was great, you know, as a general thing, and really appreciate seeing this plan and what it states. As a general community member, the one thing that I think that could enhance the plan overall is if there was some explicit statement about public value and benefit to the work of ACHP and the things. It's implied in certain areas, but it's never, I couldn't read it in a place to state. And I wish I could have drafted language just to tweak something on the airplane yesterday morning. But it really did, I couldn't find a place to make it, in my view, fit with the way it's currently drafted. But if there was time to add something, I think that that would give some value and nod to the communities and what this is, because yes, this is preserving places for Americans to experience, but that's really contained more in the vision statement and very minor places throughout, but not explicitly stated. So that would be my one recommendation if there was time to add something, or if Ashley had a recommendation to language on the fly, that since I haven't talked to her about this, and I'll leave it at that.
I would maybe look to Reed and Ashley.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as I give Ashley a little more time to be scanning the document herself, that we would certainly welcome any specific edits or comments to achieve that objective, in part because we are hoping to adopt this plan at the meeting today. So anything we might do to find that location and suggest a couple words here or there would be very useful. Thank you.
It looks like maybe a strategic goal 2 might be a good place to include that, where we're talking about fostering appreciation with the general public here. I think that we could probably add some language in there. And then Ira asked if we could include specifically tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations as well. So does that look like to everyone a place that we could maybe specifically put it? I'm fine with putting it in the language of the strategic goal. Okay. Okay.
Carol.
Mr. Vice Chairman, may I ask a question? May I ask, kind of, I obviously share your desire to express the value, the public benefit of historic preservation. Is it implied in the vision statement?
Yes, that's where I saw it being implied. I didn't know how the vision, you know, at my city, changing the vision and the mission is a Herculean task. And so I want to be, but explicitly calling it out in the vision statement would be the easiest place to do it, so it could be tied. I understand the work of the ACHP maybe doesn't get in touch the everyday American in a way, but if people understood why we do this, why do we invest money? What is the value? And this is consistency from my last time serving, and it will show up again and when we get to later in today's comments about, you know, if we're not doing this work for the Americans to enjoy and value, then why are we doing it? Why are we spending tax dollars on these issues? And I just think that it's important to call that out, to understand this is for people to enjoy and value and get benefit from it. The vision statement is the easiest place. I think it would be. That would be great.
Kyle.
Hi, this is Kyle Shearer. I did have a question or a potential suggestion. I do wonder whether it may be helpful in section 1. I'm sorry, this is, strategic goal A. I'm sorry, strategic goal, what is this? 1B, you know, potentially to call out Alaska Native corporations as well as state and tribal historic preservation officers, tribes, Alaska Native corporations, and other stakeholders, just to sort of highlight, their role in Alaska. They are in the sort of traditional consultation process. They are to be consulted, under EO 13175. So that might be something to consider.
Let me make one comment and suggestion before we proceed. So now, having at least two things on the table is potential consideration in here. We can, I want to use this time to get out any more comments and suggestions so the entire membership could hear it. If, for those that have made suggestions or have thoughts on the inclusions, if you have any draft language, and you can share it with Ashley as the meeting proceeds, we can actually move potential vote on this to the end of the meeting as she works through it, and we can bring it back up at the end. In the case that we're not ready for that at the end, we can always move this to an unassembled vote after the meeting. I just want to ensure that we get thoughtful responses in, and Ashley can walk through them through the right spot. Ashley, does that work?
Yeah, that works for me, but since we are only across the street from our offices, it is possible for us to print out another copy if there is interest in voting on this at the end of the meeting today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments beyond the two?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I was going to share this later, but there's great wording in the National Historic Preservation Act that says, in the spirit of stewardship, for the inspiration and benefit of present and future administrations. And that's paraphrased from a larger entry in the Historic Preservation Act that says about administering federal properties. But that whole thing you're talking about is the spirit of stewardship and benefit for present and future generations. Something to that effect that's like, why are we doing this?
I was going to, this is Stephanie Paul, I was going to say that I was looking under strategic goal 2, and to Ann's comment, it says foster broader appreciation for and knowledge, but then I was just going to say incorporate benefit in there. Potentially that would, maybe some of that wording would be helpful to get to the point in the previous comments.
So I'm not sure if you can see, because again, it is pretty small up there, but I did add some language to that strategic goal. So now it reads, foster broader appreciation for and knowledge of the value and benefit to the public, tribal and Native Hawaiian communities of America's irreplaceable heritage and the work of the ACHP, and communicate the value and benefits of maintaining and enhancing historic places for the future generations of America. Okay.
Does that address everyone's comments that have been raised? I'm seeing a lot of nods. Yes. All right. Any other questions, comments folks have?
Ashley, could we name this, Kelly Finizo, could we name this version 1.2, just so it's clear and for today's date?
Yes, we can.
Yep. All right, so with that, I think we are all ready to move for a vote. Oh.
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair, just to clarify, what we'll be voting on also include the Alaska Native corporations as well?
So I might punt this one to Kelly, but it's my understanding that Alaska Native corporations are included under the definition of Indian tribe in the NHPA, so.
Yes.
All right, last call. Any questions, comments? We all feel good. All right, so we'll move for a vote. Do we have a motion on this version right here that we're all looking at?
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt version 1.2 of our
Great.
strategic goals.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We have a second. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Seeing no further discussion, I call for a vote, and I believe this one needs to be a roll call vote. Ashley?
All right, Vice Chairman Voiles,
Aye.
Councilmember Michael Bose,
Aye.
Councilmember Margaret Everson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jamie Gardner,
Aye.
Councilmember Rick Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilmember Marek String, Councilmember Kyle Scherer, Councilmember John Tsuda, Amy Adamas, designee for Governor Jeff Landry,
Aye.
Honorable Mayor Robert Simison,
Aye.
Joseph Imamura for the Architect of the Capitol,
Aye.
the Honorable Catherine Scarlett for the Council on Environmental Quality,
Aye.
Brian Horn for the Department of Housing and Urban Development,
Aye.
Aaron Calkins for the Department of the Interior,
Aye.
John Thomas for the Department of Veterans Affairs,
Aye.
Kristen Thomasgard for the Department of War,
Aye.
Ira Matt for the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers,
Aye.
Ann Rains for the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers, and Carol Quillen for the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Vice Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work on this and today. I think it was appropriate that we got some finalized comments and input in to reflect on all the work that's been done over the past year with the membership and staff. Staff will work on this new plan, develop and submit an annual performance plan for the agency, and I'm sure we will keep you all updated on that. So at this point, I'll move on to the next subject, next item in the agenda, regulatory updates, and I'll start with Section 106. As I announced to you all last week in an email, which I am very, very glad to see that made it beyond our membership and out into the general public, as I assumed it would. So thank you all for accomplishing what I thought would probably happen. In that email, for those that haven't seen it, I expressed my view to the membership that I believe it's time to take a close look at our Section 106 regulations to determine how they may be updated to address modern needs and demands. As many of you know that watch this space, the Senate Committee on Environment and Natural Resources met last October to take a careful look at how Section 106 review process is working. In that discussion and in plenty of discussions prior and afterwards, there were a number of areas identified where improvements could be made. Moreover, this administration has directed agencies across the federal government to take decisive action towards streamlining their regulations that are on the book with a view of particular view in the environmental and permitting space. That begun early last year with a number of executive actions that have prompted that the president issued the first day in office and has carried forward throughout the past year. Now that we're a year into this administration, and it's 22 years since these regulations were last revised, I believe it's a great time to get to work. I know that Section 106 regulations are important to a broad array of stakeholders and to the American public themselves. I'm here today to mark my intention to make them work better, to improve and streamline them, and to make them into a continued useful tool as this country moves forward. I recognize that there are stakeholders in the public and that are very involved in this, and they deserve an opportunity to inform this effort, and I know we will benefit from their effort during the regulatory process. In our experience over the past 22 years, there's been a number of areas that have been identified where improvements should and must be explored. Some of those areas were marked out in the message that I sent you recently, and more are provided in the meeting book paper that came out the day after my message. Knowing this is a topic that you all care about, that's partly why each of you has a seat at this table. I do want to open the floor to hear about your interest, initial thoughts that you have, and how these regulations are working and how best to guide our efforts moving forward. I would ask that you be guided, though not necessarily constrained, by the questions that are in the meeting book. After we bring these interests to surface, I will then share my preferences of what that path forward may look like in this effort. As with almost every single other agenda item, you are free to email, call me, staff, to talk through this. And, Reed and Kelly here are great resources on this issue. I am going to turn it over to Reed to let him briefly summarize these questions and go into a little bit more detail of our thoughts behind that and why we included them in the email to start generating some of these thoughts. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and our technicians always remind me to remind you all when you speak on this topic to speak into your microphone if at all possible, so our recording of this event is as clear as possible, and to state your name to begin with. So real quickly, as the Vice Chairman indicated, I just wanted to summarize for you so you don't necessarily have to be pulling your meeting book paper and the email from the Vice Chairman together as we talk about this topic. Just real quickly, some things perhaps to guide this discussion. First, I think we would certainly like you to consider, could the Section 106 regulations, or of course portions thereof, be streamlined to more effectively achieve the statutory objectives of the NHPA? And if so, where? What sort of changes should be made? Are there any portions of the regulations that are difficult to interpret or have become perhaps unnecessary, ineffective, or ill-advised? We would love to hear your thoughts on that. Have the Section 106 regulations or any portion of them become outdated? If so, how can we modernize them to better accomplish the statutory objectives of the NHPA? Are there any new technologies that can be leveraged to modify or streamline the Section 106 regulations? We'll talk a little bit more about that later in this meeting. I hope your answer is a resounding yes. What additional information should the ACHP collect regarding the Section 106 review process? As you might know, the current regulations give us very little authority to collect information about the 106 process. And if there should be some additions to our ability to do that, where should those be made? Are the Section 106 regulations or any part of them inconsistent with any current executive orders or directives issued by the President? If so, how should we fix that? I would also just note real quickly, as the Vice Chairman indicated, his email the day before this meeting book came out sort of highlighted a number of areas that I think the members should be encouraged to sort of dig into. And some of these are issues that were also discussed at the Senate hearing that the Vice Chairman referenced. Those are, real quickly, 4 of them: defining undertakings and establishing areas of potential effect. We know there are a lot of questions and thoughts and in some ways concerns about how those processes work out. Assessing indirect and cumulative effects. Managing the review or scope of a review for long linear projects with limited federal involvement. We know that's an important and sort of a hot topic, if you will. And then finally, managing timelines for Section 106 reviews. So that's just a quick summary to help facilitate the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. I'd like to now talk about the path moving forward. Well, actually, I think we can open that up for discussion. Sorry, got a little ahead of myself here, not reading my own notes. So at this point, I will open it up. I have additional thoughts on path forward. Gave you a little preview there of what that looks like in terms of process and involvement from the council. So if really we want to focus this little period right now on what Reed just walked through of like substance of 106. If you have process questions, whether regulatory process, council process, Kelly and I will address that here kind of once this discussion session concludes. So at this point, I'll open up the floor. All right.
Ira Matt, NAFPO. Thank you for that reminder, Reed. I actually put it in my talking points here. I think to get to the meat of the matter there, yeah, I think they can be improved. Whether you call that streamline or further informing, clarifying, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think this comes just from how the Section 106 process has unfolded over the years. And I'm going to be speaking more directly to tribes and Native Hawaiians. But for folks who may not be aware, National Historic Preservation Act itself, 1966, was the height of the termination era. Even when that was drafted, there was no intention to include Indian tribes because there wasn't an intent for the federal government to have that responsibility to tribes. There were amendments in 92 to incorporate Indian tribes, was prior to self-governance in 94. And while it authorized the TIPOs and it was forward-seeking, TIPOs themselves didn't hit the streets till 96. There were 12 of us, my tribe being one of the original 12. I would like to extend a thank you now to the great Navajo Nation who went around and helped support many of those tribes in the development of those initial preservation offices to ensure success. But as you noted, it's been a couple decades since the regulations were updated. And a number of those substantive updates happened really between 99 and 01, if I got those years correct, Reed. And even at that time, there was very few tribal preservation officers out doing the work and little potential for it to influence the language and the regulations, which means at the time, they were still forward-looking on what could be. We're at a great point now where tribes have a number of various programs, whether they've assumed tribal preservation officer functions or developed their programs independently that can help inform how we can make a more efficient and effective 106 process. So, I know that was a bit long, but I got a little bit of a statement here, and then I'm going to talk about the importance of the consultation. But for number one, I want to say that any changes to 106, they need to produce real change in federal behavior. We've been in a bit of a rut for a while, and things need to change. Updates need to ensure that consultation with tribes happen early enough to actually shape decisions, and that it's conducted in a manner that respects sovereignty and the rights that the tribes hold under the National Historic Preservation Act, which are very specific. Streamlining shouldn't be used to bypass tribes or narrow any of the protections for sacred sites, or really treat harm as acceptable just because timelines are tight. They need to reinforce the obligation that federal agencies have to identify and consider, and this is the language from the statute, properties of traditional, religious, and cultural importance to tribes. And importantly, we need to seek to ensure that indigenous knowledge is treated as essential evidence in this work, because while it is an aside from the regulations, the Secretary of Interior's professional qualification standards recognize archaeologists, architectural historians, they do not recognize tribes as experts in their own culture. But we could seek to do something like that in the regulations that could streamline this process quite a bit. But I think it's important for a lot of members here to recognize, and I know we have a few experts here, Suda and Shurer, that could speak to this if they would like, but the significance this is going to have for Indian tribes, not only on how we engage off-reservation, but how these regulations are going to shape potential operations day-to-day on tribal lands. Updates to Part 800 can affect how tribal programs are designed, how land management decisions are made, and how tribes carry out our administrative responsibilities tied to protecting these cultural places. And so because of that reality, the process for revising these regulations needs to be guided by the time and the effort needed for tribal governance, not just tribal historic preservation officers, but tribal leadership to be fully involved, to be briefed on these matters, to be able to coordinate and collaborate internally, both on the implications this could have on tribal lands, but also off tribal lands. And I bring that up because frequently folks are used to programmatic agreements. You're talking about off-reservation impacts, or you're talking about a very specific jurisdictional impact. This has broad influence on how tribes need to be able to engage. So with that, I just want to note that NAFPO, we're here to support this effort, including trying our best to coordinate with our members to generate some specific information to further inform this effort. I'll stop right there before I get into all the little specific ideas I have on how we could improve it. But I do want to say, what was it, Reed, a couple years ago, former chairman Sarah Bronin took a look at this effort internally with staff. I know a number of recommendations were generated at that time on how these could be improved, the regulations. And so if any of those records are still available, information generated by staff may kick this thing off and help move it along in a more efficient manner. But I'll yield the floor to other members.
Thank you, Ira. Any other comments?
Thank you. Ann Rains, NICSHPO. I will note that our SHPOs in the 59 states, territories have had our eye on this issue for some time. It's no surprise that this is coming up and being taken up by the ACHP. Our members have watched the relevant congressional hearings, taken notes, and we know sort of where the conversation is, even if we're not surprised by all of it. So we've established internally a Section 106 working group of SHPOs, deputy SHPOs, and their staff who have longstanding expertise with the program and have established mechanisms for taking feedback from our, I'll say it again, 59 members, so that we can get feedback from across that spectrum and bring that to the table here. And I'll note that just like every federal agency deals with multiple SHPOs, every SHPO deals with multiple federal agencies, and we deal with submissions on a 30-day clock. It's important to remember that SHPOs don't approve, they consult. We take that role seriously as the voice of the states, and we know that other consulting parties value their role in the process as well. So thank you. We look forward to participating in the conversation.
Thank you, Ann. Any other comments, questions? Emily?
So as the representative, I think, here for the project developers who often initiate projects that undergo reviews under Section 106, I think it's really important for us to be an observer here on this council because we can represent that broader community that has to make these work. I'd really encourage the council to think about ways as we revise these regulations to standardize this process so it is more consistent across agencies and across different project types. I know speaking for the Permitting Council, our team is made up of experts who have served at Department of Interior, the U.S. Army Corps, across the government with decades of experience implementing regulations, and every Section 106 consultation we do is different. It's very difficult to give consistent information to project developers on how the process will proceed, on what they need to do to comply, and on how they can best, frankly, be responsive to the communities you all represent here in this room. So I would really encourage the group to consider how we make this a process that is more predictable for our project developers so they truly can comply with the law, comply with the regulations, and meet the needs of this community.
Thanks, Emily.
Yes, thank you, Emily. I'd like to follow up on that with two unrelated comments. One, regarding permitting. My husband works in oil and gas, so I took the opportunity to talk to his regulatory manager of his company about the Section 106 process, what could be changed, how they implement it with NEPA. She just sees it like NEPA and 106 altogether, like, we're going someplace new, we have to do all the surveys, et cetera. But I would strongly recommend using industry to provide comments back on this because they're the ones going to the permits and getting this. So I think the input from industry, I suggested Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, who has a long career in the energy development. The other comment is from the grassroots level, and I would strongly consider maintaining and encouraging opportunities for local citizen input and participation to comment in the 106 process, because often it's the local community and the citizens who are there at that grassroots level who best understand solutions for best implementing the 106 and considering opportunities to avoid adverse effects. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Thomas-Gard, Department of War. First of all, thank you for opening this up for conversation. This is something that Department of War supports very much, is very much in line with other initiatives that we're pursuing. I think streamlining would be top of our list in terms of substantive opportunities to look at the regulations, opportunities to better define no potential to cause effects would be helpful as well. And I think the last thing I'll mention is an opportunity to look at allowing agencies to rely upon previous consultations for substantially similar projects. Very much look forward to continuing to discuss this, and we will likely provide some additional comments as we move forward. But thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
John Fowler, ACHP Foundation. I would want to just sort of remind the members that the Section 106 regs are government-wide regulations, and they apply to, an interstate pipeline. They apply to a Corps of Engineers permit for a boat dock in a lake. And so when you look at the regulations, you need to have something, you need to come up with a product that can be applied government-wide. At the same time, we have lots of tools in the regulations to modify and apply the process to the specific cases of, or the circumstances of different projects of different scales. But I think it's and we also have to recognize that there are tools outside of the regulatory framework itself in the way of guidance and other kinds of informative, interpretive documents that can apply the process to these specific situations. So I don't think we should be looking simply at the regulations, but look at everything that's in the toolbox. The other thing that I think is important to consider when you are looking at the regulations is the problem the regulation, or is the problem the carrying out of the responsibilities of the regulation? There are timelines in the current regulations that limit the time a preservation authority, an Indian tribe, an SHPO, the public, and so on, has to comment or consult on a specific project. There are no timelines for the federal agency. And I would suggest that as you look at how projects unfold, that the difficulty is not an SHPO failing to meet a 30-day timeline. It's what does the agency do with the response that it gets and move on to the next step. So I think it's very important that through your process that you really home in on what are the causes of the problems. Is it the regulation, or is it the way it's being carried out? And should there be other kinds of recommendations coming out of this regulatory review process that may have to do with investment in federal agencies, in trained staff to do the work that needs to be done?
Thank you. Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Carol Quillen. I represent the National Trust for Historic Preservation. In some sense, echoing what John said, first of all, we support this review. We'd very much like to be a part of any working group that's established to review Section 106. I think it's important to review these regulations. I also think it's important to get clarity on the problem or problems that we're trying to solve, and to base that analysis on data. And I can say, as someone who's comparatively new to the field of preservation, I've heard wildly conflicting stories about the impact of Section 106. And if it's possible to get data on timelines and where the holdup is, and to define with clarity and in a kind of consensus way where the bottlenecks are and what the problems are we're trying to solve, I think this group will come up with amazing recommendations for the process. So that's just, a suggestion on how we go about it. And then what I have learned in my time at the trust is that often through a consultative process, however it takes place, whenever it takes place, we end up with a better project. We end up with a project that's actually a win-win and that accomplishes way more than an initial design might have. So in addition to getting clarity on the problems we're trying to solve and to collecting accurate data on where the holdups are and where the frustrations are for those seeking permits, I think it would be good to think through when consultation could happen that would be most likely to result in a win-win outcome.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes, Rick Gonzalez, expert member. And under strategic goal number 1, we mentioned timely, efficient, effective, and fully engaged. Our mayor also mentioned public value and benefit, which is at the end of the day what it's really all about. The whole idea, I think, of as a practicing architect and watching this for 40 years and being involved with the Historic Commission for 16 years, is that at the end of the day, most states, most counties and cities and CLGs simply don't have the expertise available, right? They're running on empty, right? They're dealing with consultants, with developers and others, that are trying to get their bridge approved or whatever the project might be and the impact on the historic resources of a place. And we are about public value and benefit, right, for those that have the least representation. The Federal 106 is like an umbrella, right, that's overseeing and working with all of the 59 states and with the TIPOs to help the counties and the cities and the CLGs to get to that public person that is impacted by this. So I just hope that we don't forget that at the end of the day. Yes, there's too much regulation, working with someone that's always fighting regulation at every level. I see it firsthand. So let's do both things. Let's streamline, because we need to do that. But let's not forget that at the end of the day, it's for, your local neighborhood group that's trying to figure out the impact of a project on their community.
Thanks, Rick. Any other questions or comments?
Good morning, Patrice Fry with Repurpose Capital, and I just want to weigh in and say that I fully embrace and support any effort to really update and modernize preservation policy and practice. I see the importance of that throughout my own work. And I want to echo a couple of the comments that have been made around, I actually, jumping ahead, I think the program comment from the Department of War is interesting in that it identifies similarities in building typology and the opportunity to really streamline projects based on their similarity to other projects. And I think that offers a lot of promise moving forward.
Thank you. Yep.
Stephanie Paul, NAPC, but I appreciate the comments, and many are reflective of what we are looking for as well. We do want to be a part of this process, appreciate the process, but we also want to make sure the local voice is heard and has the opportunity through that's not streamlined out of the consultation process, and they're often the ones that know the community best, know the projects, and can be the most helpful at the community level. I think it's good to look at the challenges of 106 and looking through the streamlining, but it's also go to revisit and do a review of the benefits and what it has done. So I think it's good to look back and where the successes have been there. Other ways looking at section 1, it could be streamlined. If maybe the federal agencies were consistent in working and getting the information, and I think we were looking at timelines and how we can all work together to keep those timelines tighter and getting everything to the commissions and the local parties. But we appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.
John Fowler, ACHP Foundation. As an observer, I'd just like to make one more observation. The Section 106 process really is an exemplar of the federal system. And it's a real opportunity for state and local government, tribal governments, nonprofit groups, citizens, businesses, and stakeholders to have a voice and a seat at the table in federal decision-making that affects the historic resources in their community. And I would hope that the members, as you look at regulatory revisions and improvements, that you think about this in the regulations in that context. It's not a heavy-handed imposition of government standards on private activity. It comes through the federal action that is being subjected to the 106 process, and the outcome ends up reflecting through consultation the views of all those stakeholders. And I think you need to look at the process in a slightly different way than one's immediate reaction to government regulation. I mean, this really is an opportunity for the people that care about their historic resources to have a voice in federal decision-making, even though the decision in the end is the federal agencies.
Thanks, John. Any other comments? Ira?
Hi, Michael Bowes, representative of the general public, and I'm new to this agency. But one thing I would take note of, our Section 106 regulations take up 25 pages in the Code of Federal Regulations. I mean, my experience over the years is that many agencies' regulations run hundreds and hundreds of pages, and ours are 25 pages. So if we can streamline them, I think that would be fantastic. But I note that they're really not that long and lengthy.
Thank you, Michael. Ira?
Ira Matt, Nathpo. I just want to say, I mean, I think there's a lot of great synergy here, and folks are all saying a lot of the same things. And actually, I want to start by kind of anchoring what I wanted to do. I was going to get in specifics, but I want to tie together what a lot of folks have been talking about, really starting over here with the permitting council, right? Standardizing, predictability. That's what this is supposed to be about. That's what tribes are after. They want predictability in this process. And it's been a challenge. And going over to the foundation, Mr. Fowler over there, I think there was a lot of great discussion too. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. There's a lot of great tools. How can we improve what exists in this? And Mr. Bowes also pointed out, this isn't a lot of information. And I think for those of us who have been around for a long time, I feel like, and that's why I mentioned with streamlining, I don't know if it's necessarily reducing as much as it is bringing in clarity to the process. And when you hear about the win-win discussion Carol had brought up, and you think back to that environmental and natural resources hearing, and even that environmental and public works hearing, one of the consistencies that folks brought in there was that early informed consultation created more informed, better projects. It allowed the least amount of impact and the greatest amount of predictability for projects. I've seen this from the tribal side. I've been a consultant for energy. I've been on the federal side. And it's not necessarily about having to meet with the various partners out there. It's not even about committing to doing the work. It's about not knowing how long things are going to take. And I do agree, federal timelines can be a big part of that. Because how many times, for those that have been around this business enough, you do things under your timeline, and then 6 months go by, a year goes by, you don't hear from a federal agency, you got business to manage. You invest yourself elsewhere, and then something shows up in the mail, and the federal agency needs it now. It's inconsistent with making sure, I think as Mr. Gonzalez pointed out, that we're able to have voices and representation in this process. And so when I look at it, and I think for folks who might not know, this is procedural. It's sequential, but it's ultimately compounding to move through the 106 process as you go from identification and documentation to evaluation, assessment, and agreements. So if you don't have that first initial start, that solid foundation, things are going to get challenging as you move along. But the documentation standards that are within the regulations, those really only identify what needs to be done at the very end. Could these be improved or further informed to help identify what needs to happen in that sequential process for federal agencies to move through? And I think as the Department of War noted, Relying on previous consultation would be great. If we had documentation standards that captured all the information so that those future undertakings, those future projects could look back and have information they knew was vetted and informed, that would be a reality for this process. So when you look at it through that manner, and I'm hearing about what everybody's talking, I think there's some great opportunities, but one of the baseline things I've always had, working with tribes, working as, as a federal preservation officer for agencies, it's making sure that you have knowledgeable professionals. And if you don't, you gotta have enough clarity on what's needed for people to be able to advance and meet the needs of not only their interests, but the advisory council. You should have that picture up from your training, the table, and everybody sitting around the table, because this isn't about one person advancing, one agency getting what they want. It's about having a collective and informed process as you advance these projects forward. So I just wanted to say, from everything I'm hearing here, I think there's a lot of great opportunity, and outside all my specifics, I think looking at documentation standards provides an opportunity to create a more informed expectation of federal agencies as they move through each step of the process, and that can, of course, be leveraged for other opportunities. But that's it for me.
Thanks, Ira. Any other comments?
Kyle Shearer. I would just hope that whatever process you're considering for thinking about Section 106 revisions, just ensure that contains opportunities for meaningful consultation with tribes and ANCs, and that's the government-to-government consultation, obviously, not the Section 106 consultation. 300 plus tribes don't have TIPOs, and they may have concerns that IRA is not necessarily representing, although he's doing a fantastic job carrying the water for TIPOs.
Thanks, Kyle. Any other comments? All right. Thank you all. That was tremendously helpful. While I was not taking notes, I know this is being recorded, so I will go back and do that. But what I will say is everything that we talked about today has been resonating in conversations that we've been having on this. So nothing today was said that was unexpected, but I think it is a good sets us up on a good path forward of working together on a council on this. I would like to talk about the path forward. It's important to me that the process of, as we go through this analysis and updating of the regulations, move forward deliberately and without delay. I'm going to turn to Kelly here to remind us of the steps necessary in any regulatory update. And particularly, I'd ask Kelly to overview the interaction and process set up with OMB and OIRA as part of any effort.
Sure.
Kelly.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So as you all, I'm sure, are well aware, any rulemaking effort that we undertake at this juncture would be subject to the Administrative Procedure Act. And as such, there are specific requirements for public participation, providing adequate notice of a proposed rule, and allowing for meaningful opportunity to comment. This is typically achieved through the Federal Register notice, through a Federal Register notice, multiple of those. And then once that adequate notice is provided, the agency, of course, must provide interested persons with the opportunities to submit written data, views, or arguments in response. So in addition to the APA requirements that we will be working very closely with OMB and OIRA on, the Advisory Council is also subject to several executive orders that will influence and impact this effort. The first being 12866, that's sort of the overarching executive order that creates the framework for reviewing significant federal regulations. That would require us, as we've actually just done this week, to submit a notice to the Unified Federal Agenda and it's simply a placeholder, if you will, that the agency intends to take some sort of rulemaking action. It is not a commitment to any specific changes, nor to any actual specific action along changing the regulations, substance or procedural, but it is to put the public on notice that we intend to start. So just a heads up, that will go live probably next week, so you may get questions. Other executive orders that we are keeping tabs on, of course, 14192, the deregulatory executive order, just tracking how this effort would line up with any others. And a very important one that the Vice Chair just referenced, and I think what Kyle was mentioning, Executive Order 13175, which requires consultation with Indian tribes for any action that would have a significant impact. It is obviously, as you've heard today, very likely any sort of effort to revise 106 regulations would have that impact. And in fact, in our agency's implementation plan for the executive order, we identify any rulemaking action as triggering that executive order's requirements. Additionally, the Advisory Council has a trust responsibility to Indian tribes that we will also fulfill in this effort. So needless to say, I think we're going to have a lot of discussion, timing, process, consultation opportunities, working with both tribes, Native Hawaiian organizations across the board. That's in addition to, of course, the public outreach that we mentioned, both required under the APA and also fulfilling our mission and our sort of best standard practice, not only engaging with the public, but our other stakeholders, our SHPO partners, other local governments, counties, all the folks that we normally bring in, industry, project proponents. So we will fold all this into those requirements and make sure that we hit all those points in a meaningful and reasonable way.
Thank you, Kelly. Recognizing that much work to get us to the point of having any updated regulation would require a great amount of time and effort in between our regular business meetings. It is my intent to form an advisory group, task force, whatever the terminology is that Reed had told us about earlier, of members to assist me and staff in advancing this effort. This is not meant to limit any other staff from, any other members from providing input as we move along, but just clarifying that this advisory group would not be granted any authority to act on behalf of the entire council in terms of your actual role, but would instead kind of be expected to roll up their sleeves and assist with analyzing information compiled by staff, advising on areas needing attention or adjustment, and developing draft recommendations for further discussion. Through this process and in between any meetings, as we go through the potential entire process, I pledge to regularly update members and engage with you through our variety of different informational meetings that we can set up outside of a formal business meeting. Please know the advisory group, it is my intention to keep that at a member designee level, so we can make decisions and recommendations and move along in the process. But like I said earlier, that doesn't take away the ability of anyone serving on the council to provide input. I know that many of y'all have, in your comments in the earlier discussion, expressed interest. I would love for any of those that are interested in serving in this group moving forward, please feel free to email me and Reed by February 20th so that we can get a group set up and move forward in that. Kelly?
I want to just add one quick thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention earlier, but in light of the Vice Chair's comments, just so you all are aware, any actual publication of a draft rule, of course, of the final rule, would require a vote of the entire membership. So keep in mind, subcommittee work is obviously going into the deliberations, but it has no voting or approval power that is retained by the membership itself.
And just a vote would occur before any draft regulation is even sent to OMB for consideration.
Correct.
So I'll just reiterate that if you do have an expressed interest, please shoot me and Reed an email before February 20th, and we'll take the next steps after that. And again, I know many of you provided great public comment here today on your thoughts. Feel free to follow that up with those here. And if you want to set up separate discussions, we can make time for that as well. John?
John Fowler, ACHP Foundation. In my role as Ghost of Christmas Past, having overseen the ACHP's revision of its regulations from 1999 to 2004, I would like to encourage the council to be vigorous in its outreach to stakeholder groups. We made a major effort back then to reach out to industry, to a wide range of local government groups and so on and so forth. And I think it's important that we move beyond the mere requirements of the APA and these executive orders, and really get a good record of what are the issues and what are the solutions. And I hope perhaps with the enhanced resources you have, although I know they're committed to other necessary things, perhaps you can get some of the staff out on the road to talk to people and listen to people.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I will provide more information as we set up the working group on what that then timeline looks like moving forward. But like I said, we've been eager to fill out the council with the membership over the past year. So now that you're here, we're ready to get to work. So looking forward to engaging with you all in a very meaningful way moving forward on this effort. At this point, we'll shift to a much shorter conversation on other regulations. As you know, and was described to you in previous conversations and your meeting materials, the members voted in December in favor of moving forward with the process to rescind both the ACHP's NEPA regulations as well as those implemented the long-gone Urban Development Action Grant Program. Both of these regulations became outdated, unused, unnecessary, but I'd like to turn to Kelly to provide us a status on the efforts to rescind these.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair. So as you all read in the meeting book or were here present back in December, the vote went across to and was carried to propose rescinding both those rules. I subsequently followed up with OIRA and OMB in late December 2025. It does take some time to work through their process. Just heard this past week that they have finished their review, and we will be moving again to publication. So just a reminder what that means. The UDAG, the Urban Development Action Grant Program regulations, are being proposed to be rescinded via a proposed rule. So that would go out for comment 30 days, and then we would need to issue a final rule, which would again require a vote of the council. The NEPA regulations are going out via an the rescission of the NEPA regulations are going out via an interim final rule. This is consistent with what other federal agencies have done across the government in response to CEQ action and the government's executive orders. And so that we could do another final rule pending any comments we receive, but it will be immediately effective. So hopefully I'm working with GSA and OMB on the final approvals to publish both those notices in reginfo.gov, which would be a public site. So I'm fingers crossed you should see those as well next week. And I will let you know any further follow-up. Of course, we will be tracking any comments we receive from the public. Honestly, I'm not really expecting much, if anything, but you never know, and we want to make sure we provide adequate opportunity for any questions or comments.
Thanks, Kelly. Unless there's any questions on that? Yep.
May I go back to A for one last question?
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman. So there was a date, you mentioned the date of February 20th for an expression of interest from members for being on the working group, but there's also a February 27th date for providing some written comments, and I just wondered if there was anything else we should know about that, if that's just a starting point for sort of the working group to have some feedback to start with, or, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, I believe the February 20th date was to express interest in being on the work group, the advisory group, and the February 27th timeline was for submitting any fuller comments or observations that you might like to make. There we go. Thank you.
That does not mean any comments or anything received after that date would not be considered. It's just more to have a more date certain as the group moves forward, to have a good set of materials and input from members. So at this point, we can move to the next item in the agenda, which is the Army program comment. I want to first thank the members who participated in the information session we held for you a few weeks ago on Army's request for a program comment on their warfighting readiness and associated infrastructure. Staff were able to summarize the program comment for you, provide feedback on parts of the request that might warrant further discussion or changes before measures were presented to you for action. As you know, the adoption of a program comment requires action from our members, given the potential impacts to historic properties that may occur when implemented by an agency. In this case, Army's request in their program comment is expansive, and I want to make sure we give this our full attention. Following last week's members' meeting, our executive director conveyed additional recommendations to the Army on such adjustments in accord with the feedback that members gave staff in that session. I'm pleased to report that Reed, Kelly, and our director for our Office of Federal Agency Programs, Jamie Loischinger, and I joined Army leadership in a meeting last week to discuss these changes, and we were able to agree on adjustments of the program comment. A record of those adjustments, as well as a revised program comment, were provided to you by staff last Friday. But I want to make sure that you have another opportunity to understand them. So I will turn it over to Jamie now and have her summarize the comments we provided, as well as the adjustments the Army agreed to. So Jamie.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and I'm pleased to be able to summarize some of the changes that have been made in response to member feedback. I'd also like to highlight some areas that remain unresolved. To start, the Army has removed the introductory language in Appendices A and B that indicated the lists of activities and properties were not exhaustive. This was important to try to put more sufficient boundaries on the category of undertakings subject to the program comments terms. The Army also removed language regarding termination of existing Section 106 agreements and alternate procedures. While the Army has indicated that it still intends to pursue termination of those agreements, it did recognize that the program comment was not the appropriate place for such a notification. Similarly, language regarding the consolidation of the Council's existing Army housing program comments under the terms of this program comment was removed. Additional language was added confirming that identification, evaluation, and assessment efforts would be conducted by or supervised by those meeting the Secretary of Interior's professional qualification standards. The Army did also add some clarifying language regarding the standards that it would use to assess adverse effects. And a section was added regarding the process for managing properties of significance to tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations. Regarding situations where discoveries of historic properties may occur, the Army added language to confirm the process by which it would consult with tribes or Native Hawaiian organizations. It did also add language that would require notification to the State Historic Preservation Office and the ACHP when a non-tribally significant property was identified. The Army also committed to conducting annual meetings for the duration of the program comment. And finally, the amendment provision provides clarification that the membership would vote on amendments to the program comment after consulting with the Army's Federal Preservation Officer. It removed the language requiring the agreement of the Army Federal Preservation Officer, though. However, as outlined in the staff analysis that was shared on Friday, I apologize for the late transmittal. That is entirely on me and my team, getting that over to the executive director. But we wanted to start with at least acknowledging that the amendment provision still does allow the ACHP chair to expand the program comments applicability to other military departments. Due to the expansive nature of the program comment, staff believes that such a broadening of scope should be considered by the full membership through the amendment process. Despite asking the Army to remove this, it does remain in the version that was shared with you late last week. There's language within the program comment that appears to require the Army to follow its terms. However, as previously indicated during the membership information session and conveyed to the Army directly, a program comment is an optional tool for Section 106 compliance. The Army can certainly choose to require its usage, but it would have to do so following its own internal processes. While the Army also included that notification process for discoveries to include the ACHP and SHPOs, such notification would occur after the discovery and also after any mitigation has already taken place. That precludes the ACHP's ability, as well as the SHPO's ability, to opine on potential solutions, including considering ways to minimize adverse effects on historic properties. The program comment still relies on a definition of properties of traditional religious and cultural importance that includes the condition that tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations must preemptively identify such properties and disclose them and their specific geographic location to the Army. Doing so puts a significant burden on these parties and is inconsistent with the requirement for agencies to develop appropriate identification strategies in consultation with a tribe or Native Hawaiian organization. It also emphasizes the need for a proactive identification effort prior to planning for these types of undertakings. While the Army has attempted to create bounds for the category of undertakings subject to the program comment, it still allows installations to create lists of undertakings with no known adverse effects. However, it has the potential for including activities that are not currently included in the scope of the program comment or for which there may not be consensus regarding adverse effects. On a related note, while the Army has chosen to focus on the military landscape as the affected historic property, such a decision eliminates consideration of other properties that may be located within Army installations or affected by Army warfighting activities that may have significance that are related to non-military parts of American history. And they could be adversely affected by the listed activities. If such non-military properties are not covered by this program comment, it's unclear how the Army would be able to account for them. Finally, some other effects to historic property, such as noise or visual effects, are removed from consideration for most actions, with other effects, such as neglect, removal, and transfer, lease, or sale of a property, are only assessed as adverse for certain property types that are identified within the program comment. In general, while some parts of the program comment have been improved, there do remain questions about the identified historic properties and the range of effects to them. As a result, as currently written and submitted for membership action, the program comment may challenge the Council's ability to reasonably comment here on how the Army would take into account the effects of the listed warfighting activities and maintenance actions on historic properties. I'm happy to answer any further questions about our consultation process, the feedback we received, and provisions within the program comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, for that. I recognize that a number of members might still have questions on the program comment as it now stands. Staff or I will try to do our best to answer or provide any further context. I will recognize that Department of War is a member here, and I understand there may be representation from the Army here. So if questions get into more of a technical, operational, or implementation manner, I do open it up if the Department of War would like to speak further to those through the Army. So at this point, I'll open the table for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Be happy to go first, kick us off. This is Ann Rains, National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers. On behalf of our 59-member SHPOs, NCSHPO asks our fellow members to decline to approve the Army's proposed program comment. We appreciate that the ACHP staff have been diligent in consulting with SHPOs on this matter and have briefed us here on many of our shared essential concerns with both the overall approach and the specifics of the Army's proposal. We also appreciate that some changes have been made. However, the program comment as written is still not acceptable, does not comply with ACHP's own regulations, and in some instances is in conflict with the law. For context, I'd like to read to you the Army's own words. In its 2019 memo regarding its strategic agenda for Army National Historic Preservation Act improvement, the Army writes, quite movingly, "The Army's mission is to defend those things most prized by all nations, our people, our land, and our resources. Resources worth defending or worth protecting, and by protecting historic resources, the Army safeguards our nation's heritage and supports its national defense mission. The Army protects historic resources through compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. The NHPA does not mandate preservation of such resources, but requires the Army and other federal agencies to assume responsibility for and consider the impact of their actions on historic properties. This requirement is met through compliance with Section 106 of the NHPA." Close quote of the Army. The memo goes on to say that the Army, quote, "owns the largest inventory of historic buildings in the federal government and therefore, quote, has a tremendous stewardship obligation." What the Army wrote in this strategic agenda memo is absolutely correct. They do have a tremendous stewardship obligation, and they do have to comply with the law, the NHPA. But what is happening with this program comment? The Army is saying they can't manage to comply with the law, that they can't possibly manage to continue to consult with SHPOs, TIPOs, other consulting groups, and the public, and that anyway, those groups have nothing to offer, that we are just superfluous. The Army is saying that properties owned by the Army, such as Fort Leavenworth, home of the Buffalo Soldiers, Arlington National Cemetery, and West Point, are significant only within the confines of the Army, and nobody else should have a say in what happens there. That properties owned by the Army, which encompass significant archaeological sites from a time well before the founding of this country, are significant only within the context and relatively recent time frame of the Army's activities there. That the Army of all agencies simply doesn't have the resources to comply, and compliance has no value to the Army. The PC maintains that the Army should be exempt from the law as relates to historic preservation. In fact, the language of the document itself states that the program comment, quote, "does not affect or in any way alter the Army's responsibilities under any requirements other than the NHPA, and a program comment cannot be used to exempt the Army from compliance with the law." So under this PC, from now on, Army actions on and off of Army property, whether or not already explicitly included in this agreement, many of which are already acknowledged to cause adverse effects, will be allowed to proceed without meaningful consultation or mitigation, and there will be no more evaluation of historic properties or other historic preservation activities for the rest of time. And incidentally, this agreement can easily be expanded to all other military branches. On many grounds, this program comment is objectionable to SHPOs, who are partners and not adversaries of the Army or other federal agencies in the National Preservation Framework. The Texas SHPO, for example, cites its, quote, "strong, durable relationships with the U.S. Army installations across the state that have been cultivated by years of meaningful consultation," calling out, quote, "a series of successful programmatic agreements with Fort Bliss, the state's most historically significant Army-managed installation." The Arizona SHPO cites, quote, "the relationships of trust that have developed with the Army, our office, and other consulting parties over the years." Many other SHPOs feel the same. To conclude, as one of the many ways this program comment attempts to turn historic preservation concepts on their heads, the Army boldly asserts that Section 106 quote, adversely affects historic military landscapes. By ignoring what words already mean and inventing new terms to bolster their argument, the Army asks us to believe that it would be damaging to their history to preserve their history. If we accept this illogical argument, along with all the other deficiencies of this document, and approve the proposed program comment, this council will absolutely lose its credibility. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Ann. Please limit your, unless you're a member on the council, please limit your reaction to any comments or questions. Ira?
Thank you. Ira Matt, NATHPO. I want to start off by saying NATHPO echoes everything that the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers has stated. And I want to go on to say that there was a challenge with this information coming at a late hour. I do want to, from the outset, recognize the Herculean effort and the amazing quality of those products from the Advisory Council staff on this. It was one of those unfortunate confines that they work in. And kind of stepping back a little bit, it's an opportunity when you look at regulatory revision timelines that the Advisory Council must work in when these are proposed, so that they are able to conduct adequate consultation with Indian tribes and to inform members. So I wanted to make that connection. But one of my biggest issues is with those updates, and I do appreciate how this is moving in a positive direction, we are finally seeing this program comment include information about how they intend to collaborate, coordinate, consult with Indian tribes. Unfortunately, this is after all of the Army-led early coordination sessions. This is after the consultation sessions the Advisory Council was able to host. NASPO is not in a position where we can look at this information, which, and this also is in a scenario where those simple red lines can be viewed in isolation. The role of the tribes in the information that was included means that we have to do an analysis of the entire program comment again, 100+ pages. And I'm going to tell you right now, none of our members, tribes broadly, have even gotten access to these updates, let alone been able to review, digest, or comment on these. And I wanted to go through and note that there was a number of issues we had with it. I'm just also going to say, I think Jamie captured most of those concerns that we have about how this is going to alter the role of tribes, and in particular, how it attempts to impose on tribes to complete the responsibility of the federal agency in not only identifying and documenting these sites that are of cultural significance to us, but there is no discussion about the confidentiality to the depth or degree necessary when that information is communicated. Because I think for a lot of the folks in this room, once this information is in federal hands, it is very difficult to protect it from release under FOIA. And there are provisions, Section 304, National Historic Preservation Act, but I'm going to go on record saying those are pretty insufficient, and there's been a lot of work to further inform that. So for all the reasons I outlined, for what we heard from Nick Shippo and from ACHP staff, NASPO would like to make a motion that the Vice Chairman request that the Army extend the review period for the program comment an additional 60 days. I'm not saying that this cannot move forward, but it requires additional work and additional effort to make sure all the parties, including the public, who is going to be subject to the impacts from this, are able to fully comment and participate.
Thank you, Ira. Can I ask you clarify the motion one more time?
Just the motion.
Just the motion.
Motion for the Vice Chairman to request that the Army extend the review period for the program comment an additional 60 days.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Any further discussion on that?
If we do that, do we risk it effectively defeating this? Because we have a certain timelines that we're apparently obligated to meet, and we're running up against those timelines.
So I will take a moment here and let Kelly, we still have the motions on the table. We have a second, but I do want her to take a moment here to explain the options that the council does have before it, not on this particular motion, but the three options that we do have, and particularly on this motion, what that means for the timing on the program comment.
Yes, thank you. So, per the regulations, as you correctly pointed out, the ACHP has to take action within the regulatory timeline. In this instance, the Army preemptively gave us 60 days, I believe, which is expiring on the 16th, 17th?
It would fall on the 17th. The 16th is a
Is a
federal
holiday.
holiday. so.
17th. So functionally, today is the opportunity for the membership to take action. Your options are to approve the program comment, decline to comment, or request, as was just done via this motion, that the vice chair ask the Army to extend the timeline for review. If this motion were to carry and the vice chair were to make that request and the Army were to decline, then the advisory council functionally has declined to comment within that regulatory period. So yes, I think, Michael, what you were asking is that it would be effectively not taking action if the Army declines to comment, if the motion carries. A lot of ifs there. Does anybody else have any other questions about motions, procedural?
Not procedural. I just had some input on the request. Being a new board member, but being this my second term, I do have a little bit of history with the Army. And I remember in my first term, I think, Mayor, you might have remembered, one of the early meetings, the Army came in and said, we'd like to put vinyl siding on our buildings. And being at that time the only architect on the board, I said, why are you proposing vinyl siding? That's, nobody does that, right? So I'm concerned about qualifications. Who's going to review the work? Are they going to present their own work and review their own work? How does that work? I mean, I wish I could do that in my line of business, Not that I want to, but I have a concern about that. So I'm concerned about the Army Federal Preservation Officer and his staff and their qualifications. I would like to make sure that the Secretary of the Interior standards are rigorously applied to make sure that they are vetted and that they qualify to review this work. And I'm also concerned that they're only giving us one annual meeting. I think that's really not enough. I think maybe we can tie it into when we meet, just to have a little bit more input. And last but not least, when I see the word neglect, it usually follows with demolition by neglect, right? It just happens too much in our business, So them wanting to remove neglect makes me very uncomfortable in voting for this today. And that's why I'm seconding the motion, because I think we need more time to vet this out. And apologize, right? We just added 9 members, right, the last month. Sorry to the Army, but we do have a full board now, and we should be able to give input, Mr. Vice Chairman, very quickly, so that we can try to resolve this in 60 days. Thank you.
Carol, that's all yours come up, sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot one last thing. It also sets a bad precedence.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Carol Quillen for the National Trust. Is it appropriate at this point procedurally to speak in favor of the motion, or, okay. We also would like more time to review the changes and to consider some of the ongoing challenges that Jamie highlighted at the National Trust. I also genuinely believe it's in the interest of the administration, the President, and the Army that we come to some broad consensus about the program comment, and that we not proceed with a level of uncertainty about what it means or significant dissension in this group. And I think we have the opportunity with a delay to work towards a document that perhaps many people could understand and support, and that would be honestly in the long-term interest of all of us.
Margaret?
Hi, Margaret Everson, expert member. I wonder, Mr. Vice Chair, if we could have some discussion, maybe some input as well on the timing in terms of the appropriateness of 60 days. If that's an appropriate timeline, if 30 days is more appropriate, I would like to maybe get some feedback on that. What I've seen in my short time as a member, I think the staff did an incredible job on the drafts that I've had an opportunity to review in terms with meeting with the Army, having them provide some clarifications. I thought that the clarity of the last document, I guess that came last week, was much more focused and robust in the response to a lot of the concerns that I've seen. So I wonder, in terms of any additional clarity that needs to be provided or is being recommended, is 60 days the right amount of time? Is there less amount of time that might be more appropriate? I'd love to get some feedback on that.
Yeah, and at this, I'll turn to Reed and Kelly and Jamie if they have any thoughts or comments on the.
Who's on deck first?
I think it was Ira that was
Yeah,
framing for us.
since Ira made the motion, he should explain first.
Yes.
All right, well, I'll step into this. I do want Kelly to actually follow up in a second. We talked about what happens if the Army does not approve the 60 days. It would be helpful to articulate, since it was raised, just what the process would be if they said yes to a 60-day extension. But I chose 60 days in talking with other folks, in particular for tribal consultation. Generally, that's going to be providing tribes several weeks' notification in preparation for review. You conduct the consultation, and there's multiple weeks afterwards for them to be able to develop and provide comments. The standards, including, I'm not speaking as an ACHP staffer, but as somebody who led that for the advisory council, is a 30-day lead-in and a 30-day follow, along with most standards regarding Executive Order 13175, the Presidential Memorandum on Uniform Standards for Tribal Consultation. So when we talk about the standardizing that we've been looking to do, that's been an ongoing effort outside of this around consultation, and so the 60 days provided that platform. And some groups might need less time, and there might be groups who prefer more time, but that was just mostly for planning and implementation purposes for, in particular, sovereign tribal governments. So that was my intent with that timeline.
I'll let Reed, Jamie, Kelly provide any other context that they have.
Yeah, thank you. So in discussing a number of possible scenarios that might occur today, I did confer with staff on what would be sort of the key steps we would need to take were there an extension of the time to make the revisions and bring it back up for member consideration. And I think we talked about 45 days or 60 days being ideal as well. Now, I do think that there is a legitimate question to be considered about whether additional consultation, external consultation outside of the council with states and tribes and others would be necessary. I think to some extent that hinges upon whether we're continuing to refine a document that we've already gotten feedback on and are addressing comments we've already received, versus making substantial changes that present new issues or new approaches that might warrant that external consultation. So I think that's an important question that we would want to address early on in any extension. I would just say in general terms that, of course, at the staff level, as we work to support you and bring these and discuss these comments with the Army, we would need obviously some time to look at those initial revisions, make some adjustments. I would argue that it would also be important for us to schedule another informational session with the members so that you understood where we had gotten in those initial discussions, and we got hopefully final input from you all on whether we were sort of heading in the right direction and in a position to conclude those consultations. Then, if we're talking about 60 days, that's obviously well before a next business meeting would be scheduled. So we would need to take some time after that member informational session to have an unassembled vote. And typically, just generally speaking, those unassembled votes take about 2 weeks. The voting period can be a little bit shorter, but just in terms of teeing it up and giving the members some time to consider that, they take about 2 weeks. So. Again, I think 60 days would be ideal, and we would be happy to support the members in such an extension.
Any other questions or comments? Motion on the table. Yep, Marguerite.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mark String, representative of the general public. I just have two legal questions which would help inform my view of this issue as a relatively new member and also hopefully the council's consideration. Some of the comments about the Army's proposal suggested that this was an attempt to exempt the Army from the NHPA. And first, I'd be interested here if there's someone from the Army who can respond to that. Is that how the Army is viewing this? So that would be interesting if someone can comment on that, if this is a purported exemption from the legal requirements. And number two, perhaps this is a question for the staff. Can a comment like this, can it legally have that effect of all the legal vehicles that the council has and the agencies have to interact with the council and the NHJP requirements? Does a comment, even if it purports to exempt an agency from the law, can it actually have that legal effect under the law and the regulations?
Why don't I take question 2 and then defer to DOW and Army on question 1. So I think, as you rightly noted, there's multiple options and vehicles for the Advisory Council to tailor the 106 process in response to an agency request. We do have the authority under the statute, the National Historic Preservation Act, to exempt activities if they meet certain very specific criteria, minimal, foreseeable, adverse effects. In this case, the Army has not presented it as such, as a request for an exemption. We have, in other program comments, streamlined or limited subsequent Section 106 review based on the notion that the upfront work that the agency has already done takes into account the effects, because those effects are predictable, they're anticipated, they're well-known, and there's usually some sort of mitigation offered as well to resolve any potential adverse effects. A program comment, when you look at the other types of alternatives that we have, is supposed to be the Advisory Council commenting on a whole category of undertakings, telling the agency, if you do X, Y, and Z, this is how you're taking into account the effects on historic properties. Procedures where the agency would continue to take into account the effects on historic properties where those effects may not be known would fall under a different type of alternative, the alternate procedures. And then I'll...
Yeah, I will note DOW will have to recuse itself from any vote on this, but want to allow them the opportunity to provide any comments.
Sure. Thank you. I would ask if the Vice Chair would recognize the Army to comment on their behalf. The Army is represented here by Deputy Assistant Secretary Amy Borman.
Absolutely. Amy, Jamie, I think, is getting up from her seat if you want to.
No, please into the microphone. Yeah.
Good morning. As they indicated, my name is Amy Borman. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Environment, Safety, and Occupational Health, and it is my office who has written this program comment and who has written the previous program comments on our historic housing inventory. The Army does not view program comments as an exemption or an exception to the Section 106 process. The regulation allows for tools to be used to comply. Program comments are one of those tools that can be used for compliance. And so we're exercising the tool that is already available to us to be able to comply with Section 106.
Thank you, Amy. Any other questions, comments from the members before we return to the motion on the table? Michael?
Has anybody spoken to the Army about the idea of extending the time limits?
Sorry.
Just read Nelson here real quickly. Not formally. I know they're aware of some discussions amongst members about that possibility, but I think today is the first time this discussion is being had sort of in the light of day.
I will just say, as DOW as a member, the three options that you as a council have before you to act, that is, something that is known by all members. So The option of what is on the table here is one that is presented with any vote.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, sorry.
If I may, first of all, I think it makes sense to delay the decision if at all possible. And I just wanted to make a general observation, so forgive me. I think the Army comment the program comment does two really interesting things. One I've already talked about, which is thinking about building typologies and how that might help us in our both consistent and speedier review of projects. And the second is tiering of cultural resources. There are other countries, the UK is one example, tier cultural resources, and that helps them in their decision-making process in terms of the kinds of interventions that may or may not be appropriate. And so while I may not draw the tiering lines exactly the way you see it in the Army program comment, I offer as an observation for this body to think about, because you all are in the business of advising Congress and the President. And I think there's good reason to think that a lot of the friction we see in preservation is related to sometimes our inability to think about the importance of different levels, different kinds of resources, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Any other, Mayor?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Robert Simpson for the record. I support the motion and the delay, and this does come back to the same, being on here for the second time, but it's a new issue. I've spoken to Mr. Nelson about this, but I try to be consistent where I can in my viewpoints, and when we discussed the previous one, I had real challenges with us spending money where public doesn't have value and benefit directly, on historic preservation, because that's where I think it kind of goes to the tiering. There are different areas where this makes sense. And one of the things that, I couldn't make the meeting where this was discussed, but, how does this impact what I would consider the quasi-public parts of the areas of the Army and potentially all branches of the military? I think that's an important, maybe, distinction that should exist, not just in listing the National Historic Places, but other public buildings, that where you do invite the communities, local communities to come and gather, and how are those treated differently than, say, a place where they are housing, other things that the public will never get to? And should they be separated or treated differently or identified in this process? That was, to me, something that I would have brought up had I been able to make the meeting and provide comments to folks. And in order for me to support something like this, I think that's going to have to be somehow called out or separated, that I do identify the public gathering places on military installations as maybe being called out or treated separately. So with that, I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Mayor.
I would just comment that the foundation is the National Register and eligibility for the National Register.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ann Rains, NICSPO.
Thanks, Ann. Any other comments or questions? John?
John Tasuda, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess I would like to submit this to the department to think about. They obviously have to make a decision about whether they want to consider taking an additional time or whatnot. First, I'd say, I think what they're presenting deserves a lot of consideration moving forward. And sort of at a gut level, I would support that, I think. But I have to say, it's been a pretty short time frame that we've had to look at, and it's a substantial document with, with a big proposal. So one, I would ask personally if unless it somehow impinges their process, their decision-making process, it'd be great to give us a little more additional time. And I add also, sort of from personal experience, over the years, I've done a lot of tribal consultations. And I've done a lot of tribal consultations on subject matter that was not particularly popular with the tribes. But allowing a little additional time and some back and forth comment really lets sort of the steam out of the teapot, and lets people get to consensus area. So the other sort of question I would ask the department is, if a few additional days doesn't somehow impact their process or their regulatory schedule, it might be worth getting a little more consensus moving forward because, again, I think what they've proposed in general is a great idea and would love to support it. Maybe they can just, with a little additional time, would be able to develop a little more consensus. And it sounds like a lot of folks here think that there's a lot of good ideas there. And maybe it's just polishing off our thoughts and whatnot to that comment. So I just offer that to the department really as a question or a thought.
Thanks, John. Any other questions, comments? I do want to allow Department of War, if they have any, through the Army to, if they have any other comments that they would like to provide before we act on the motion at hand. Yep. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. So thank you, and I appreciate all of the comments and the feedback and the concern about time. As the ACHP leadership indicated, we had already extended the date and provided some additional time. It sounds like some additional time is needed, and so we would be happy to offer an additional 45 days. And I would ask during that 45 days, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, that you please reach out directly to myself or to Dr. Goldensoff, and we will be happy to have any conversations with you and provide additional detail on what we were thinking, why we wrote the program comment in the way that we wrote it, and what we are, what we are facing as a federal organization, and why we believe that using this particular tool helps us streamline the modernization of the Army.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Amy. Anything else, Kristen?
No, nothing further. Thank you.
So the motion on the table here, and it has a second, is for 60 days. However, I recognize that the Army just stated a different time frame, so I want to allow for any comments between the members, discussion between the members, reflecting on that.
Mr. Vice Chair, wondered if I could perhaps ask our fellow member if they would consider revising the motion to reflect the input by the Army.
So at this point, yeah, I'm just going to jump in here. I think what we would need is amendment to that motion. So if you want to propose an amendment to that motion, if we have a second, then we need to vote on that amendment, and then we'll go back to vote on the original motion.
Then may I propose an amendment to reflect the timeframe of 45 days?
So there is a proposal for a motion for an amendment to the existing motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion on the amendment to the existing motion at hand? Ira?
Yeah, so I think for me, and this is obviously without going back to my members, 60 days was a good time that they discussed. If the 45 days is utilized, if it's effective, if the outreach is there, and if things are strategic, and I think it can achieve the same outcome. I will say that. That's the important part, is to make sure that that's achievable. I know Reed has talked about 45 days, and I've been on the inside. So I know that can be done. Always feel bad when I'm saying this can be done, and I'm looking at other people doing the work associated with that. So I would be amenable to that as long as the staff in particular felt like this was achievable, and for the members as well. We're going to have a compressed time to be able to participate in these member forums. They were going to be able to prioritize that, or if maybe there was additional outreach to help get a consensus on the best times for any informational sessions. So just putting those kind of caveats out there to make sure that we could achieve that. And, but yeah, I would be agreeable.
Thank you, Ira. I may look at Reed if he has any comments on just the and back to staff.
I would say we could make either 45 or 60 days work. Yep.
Thank you, Reed. Any other comments, questions on the current amendment to the motion that's on the table?
I'm just going to repeat the amended motion to make sure we're all in the same place. So on the table is an amendment to the proposed motion to direct the vice chair to request the Army to extend the review period for this program comment for an additional 45 days. Everyone? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Carol?
Just a quick clarification, are we voting on the amendment or the motion itself?
You're voting to amend the initial the initial motion, excuse me, and then we'll turn around and do another vote on the original motion if it passes as amended, if it doesn't pass as it was originally proposed. And we need a majority of those present and voting to pass the motion, but in both instances.
Thank you, Kelly. Any further questions? All right. Well, we will move to a roll call vote on amending the current motion from 60 days to 45 days.
Okay. Vice Chairman Voiles.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael Bose.
Aye.
Councilmember Margaret Everson.
Aye.
Councilmember Jamie Gardner. Aye. Councilmember Rick Gonzalez.
Nay.
Councilmember Marek String.
Aye.
Councilmember Kyle Scherer.
Abstain. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the Army Reserve. After consultation with the ACHP, GC, determined that it's appropriate to recuse myself.
Can you turn on your mic and re-say that eloquent sentence?
Abstain. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the Army Reserve, and after consultation with Kelly, I have determined that it's appropriate to recuse myself.
Councilmember John Tsuda.
Aye.
Amy Adamas, designee for Governor Jeff Landry.
Aye.
The Honorable Mayor Robert Simison.
Aye.
Joseph Imamura for the Architect of the Capitol.
Aye.
The Honorable Catherine Scarlett for the Council on Environmental Quality.
Aye.
Brian Horn for the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Aye.
Aaron Calkins for the Department of the Interior.
Aye.
John Thomas for the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Aye.
Kristen Thomasgard for the Department of War.
Abstain.
Ira Matt for the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers.
Aye.
Ann Rains for the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers.
Reluctant, aye.
Carol Quillen for the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. So back to the amended motion at hand. If Kelly can repeat that for everyone, just so we know.
Sure. So now on the table is a motion to direct the vice chair to request the Army extend the review period for the program comment for an additional 45 days.
Thank you, Kelly. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Do we need a motion and a second?
No, it's
We're good?
already.
Okay, great. So we'll move to a roll call vote.
All right, one more time. Vice Chairman Voiles.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael Bose.
Aye.
Councilmember Margaret Everson.
Aye.
Councilmember Jamie Gardner.
Aye.
Councilmember Rick Gonzalez. Councilmember Marek String.
Aye.
Councilmember Kyle Scherer.
Abstain.
Councilmember John Tsuda.
Aye.
Amy Adamas, designee for Governor Jeff Landry. Aye. The Honorable Mayor Robert Simison.
Aye.
Joseph Imamura for the Architect of the Capitol.
Aye.
The Honorable Catherine Scarlett for the Council on Environmental Quality.
Aye.
Brian Horn for the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Aye.
Aaron Calkins for the Department of the Interior.
Aye.
John Thomas for the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Aye.
Kristen Thomasgard for the Department of War.
Abstain.
Ira Matt for the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers.
Aye.
Ann Raines for the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers.
I suppose.
Carol Quillen for the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. So with that result, I just want to thank the staff. Thank you, Ira. Thank you to the DOW and the Army for working through that. We will follow up with DOW and the Army with the request, and we will inform members of the results of those discussions. With that, we can move on to the next topic.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sorry.
Could I make, John Fowler, ACHP Foundation. Just a quick comment. The ACHP has commendably launched on a revision effort for its Section 106 regulations. I think it would be useful for clarification during this review period of how does the reg revision effort relate to the program comment. It would seem somewhat unfortunate to make reg changes that would require the program comment to be changed in the not-too-distant future, and reg changes may satisfy some of the needs for the program comment. So I just throw that out for further thought.
Yeah, I'll say a few comments here, but I'm sure we can come up with some more formalized kind of thoughts from the council and staff. Starting a regulatory process, in my view, is not a defined action. There are a number of steps that have to go through there, or it's not a defined result. So I, at least in my position right now, want to ensure that the agencies and departments across the executive branch continue implementing 106 regs that are on the books as they see fit. And if there's a need for them to address that through any of the mechanisms, I want them to be thinking through that. I think that with the news of the work on 106, that is something that they should take into account as they're thinking through their own strategies and how they implement 106 on the table. But I would not want to say anything too affirmative of discouraging them to take whatever actions they may need for their implementation of 106 in the time being while a regulatory action is taking place. We will move on to the next to last agenda item here, so the Cultural Resources Data Platform update. I would like to have staff give you an update on what I think has been a very exciting project as we've talked through it for advancing for our consideration. They've been advancing for our consideration. Those that have been on the council for a while or repeat members know that the ACHP received funding from the Permitting Council. I thank our council representative here today for that great funding to develop digital tools that will assist planners in carrying out Section 106 reviews. In this administration, we took the opportunity to update and make some of the adjustments to that project that I think you will appreciate. It's important to me that the council get behind and contribute to this effort. So I'm asking staff to update you so we can have discussions on how to further advance it. I'll turn it over to Reed now to introduce this effort, and I think he will bring along some additional staff as well to talk through the presentation. Reed?
Thank you, Vice Chair, and I'm really glad that we can talk to you about this today and that we've saved it for the end so we can talk about some glam and some wow and some really cool things. I want to just acknowledge that I think few topics in historic preservation have been around longer and have been on the minds of preservationists any more so than the question of how best to protect and then access data to inform Section 106 reviews and the federal historic preservation review process in general. That challenge has been around for a long time. I think, in fact, sort of looking back in time, the ACHP itself provided recommendations on this very topic in 2006 after the Preserve America Summit, some of which you may recall or have been there. We also know that in the 20 years since the Preserve America Summit, that our partners in federal agencies and states and Indian tribes have made a lot of progress in managing data and making it available to decision makers. But we also know that project planners, federal agencies, and applicants themselves hunger for more data to be available, for it to be more readily available, and to have it presented in more consistent and digestible terms. Frankly, I think until the advent of AI, any effort to do that would have been very expensive and cumbersome and time-consuming. But I think AI now, among other modern tools, presents some really exciting opportunities for us to achieve that goal, to have that data more readily available, more consistently available, and to really have it inform that early planning process. I want to just acknowledge that with the administration's support of the use of AI tools, which I very much appreciate, with great partners like the Permitting Council on this effort, I think we can build an amazing platform that will start making information more readily available to that broad range of folks and protect the information that we need to protect. We absolutely can and we must provide better access to that data. Now, again, we know that that data is already available primarily through our 59 state historic preservation officers and many other tribes and federal agencies, but we know that it can be cumbersome and time-consuming to access. I want to just sort of end with an acknowledgement that there are legitimate concerns about protecting some of that data, and we understand and hear those concerns as well. So as we go forward, we're going to talk both about making public data more available, but also finding ways to protect that other data, and hopefully eventually making it, having it inform the process as well. I really think it's time for us to move forward with this. I'm excited about it, and I'm happy to have staff here present a little bit more information about what we're actually doing. So I will now turn it to Blythe Semmer, who is our Policy and Legislative Officer and who has been helping us with this topic for some time, to give you a brief presentation on what we're doing. Blythe, take it away.
Thank you, Reed. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for this chance to introduce the members to the Cultural Resources Data Platform. We just have kind of a short introduction to let you know what we hope to achieve through this kind of project realignment, and we'll talk a little bit about how we think we might go about doing that at this point. So as Reed noted, there were modifications to that original proposal of the ACHP for a nationwide map of historic properties that were made here in response to member concerns about, issues like duplication of data if the ACHP managed something like a GIS system itself, and potential issues with how that could be handled and managed on an ongoing basis. The reimagined project approach here is responsive to direction from the administration about using technology, including AI, to create efficiencies in the permitting process. So these are some of the project goals that we kind of hope that the system will be able to achieve using, as Reed said, these new and emerging technologies to make access to information about where historic properties have already been identified much easier to access, and have that be available early in project planning, to leverage that data to help project planners avoid conflicts with historic properties wherever possible, resulting also in time savings and cost efficiencies where the technology can help with the search process, with the research that goes into supporting Section 106 review, and thus where we see our contribution to improvement in the overall permitting process. So the context for this project now falls within sort of recent developments following on that original Permitting Council investment in IT solutions. It is responsive first to the presidential memorandum on updating permitting technology for the 21st century that came out in April of last year. And then as a consequence of that, then CEQ's issuance of the Permitting Technology Action Plan in May of last year. The ACHP, as a participant and a member of the Permitting Council and a participant in those discussions about how we improve the permitting process
government-wide, then generated its own action plan as we were called upon under the Permitting Technology Action Plan for how we'll implement those ideas. And I'll just note that in that, we acknowledged two particular roles. First, our own responsibility to make internal processes more efficient using technology, but also, and importantly, addressing the information needs that federal agencies confront in seeking and analyzing data about the locations of known historic properties as agencies and project proponents cite infrastructure projects that will be subject to Section 106 reviews. So this is kind of that broader expression of how we see our responsibility related to permitting technology. That led then to the proposal and the acceptance by the Permitting Council of a modification to our agreement in fall of last year so that we can proceed in the way that we have planned today. With that, I'm going to recognize my colleague Razor Rahman, who is our Director of the Office of Information Technology, to speak a little more about the specifics of that approach.
I'm Razor Rahman, Chief Information Officer at the ACHP. Thank you for the opportunity to bring together two things that come naturally together, the latest in AI research and historic preservation. So the problem here we were trying to address goes along with what the original project was, but very different in the approach and the implementation and also the scope. Originally, we were looking at building a centralized map of all the data for cultural resources and historic sites, but we had the opportunity to revamp this whole thing as an AI-first project, and that gave us the opportunity to increase the utility of the system significantly by looking at a completely new way of doing this. And originally, we had also internally discussed and questioned the value of providing a map, typically an Esri system, which a lot of federal agencies and state organizations already use. But so we've been building internally AI systems for over a year. This is the second year doing this. The capability was not there before, which is there now. And we developed an architecture for this, which we presented back in October to Google and Google DeepMind. They were really impressed by it, and they are our key partner with this. So the primary problem we're trying to address here is the distribution of data and also the difficulty in access to information, site information, both surveyed and not surveyed. Lowering the barrier to that, and also developing new approaches and interfaces to access that information. As part of that process, one of the key things we'll be doing, and this alludes to someone mentioned earlier, is gathering data about the process itself, looking at the process flows and bottlenecks, so we can develop benchmarks and metrics around that also, on how much we're making the process more efficient and accelerating through this. The key components to this system is a agentic AI retrieval system. The reason for this is that we will not be the central holder of the information. We are actually going to go out to the federal, state, and if possible, tribal system to retrieve that data as part of the early project planning process. So the difference here is that getting to data sharing or data standards, data agreements that way, and having a centralized technology, typically API-based system to access all this information, we'd probably be here 5 years later in another meeting and talking about it still. So to bypass that, what we're saying is that you leave your data how it is, and the way you provide the access federated. We will model that same process. You don't worry about that. Let that burden be on us and not on you. We don't want to increase any burden on the states, our federal partners, or the tribes. So we're going to handle that. And we are going to build the systems to go out and do that just as a human would, but in a much more efficient process, and hopefully reduce the timelines for accessing that information. And as part of that key functionality of getting access to the information, we'll be able to provide sort of a deep research function. So doing analysis of that information, whether it's geospatial data, data about surveyed sites or documents, aggregating all of that, processing it, and providing relevant information to project planning. Additionally, with the current generation of the generative AI tools that are visual, what we're also looking to do is provide simulation, impact simulation, and visual simulation. So if you're planning infrastructure projects that are like highways or gas pipelines or a data center, what would the actual impact, site impact be? Are there ways to do route optimization to lower the impact? And that's beneficial to both the project planners, the federal and the state parties involved, and also allowing us to provide the protection to the cultural resources present in those sites. So we're very much in tune with the latest research of the AI systems, and we're also well aware of the need for safety and safeguard of this information. The infrastructure we're developing this on is in a FedRAMP High environment from Google. And then additionally, the access to the information will be federated. So we will establish, working with an initial set of state and federal partners, data sharing agreements. This is not something that you can just go out and access this information publicly. It will be a federated process to access this information. And then we understand there's sensitive information as a subset of the complete data sets, and we'll be handling that differently. Whether that's not available in the system at all, it'll be part of a different system depending on the level of required access to that information. And additionally, there's a mandatory human oversight level throughout much of these processes. While there's automation involved, but there's also allowance for human oversight and control gates throughout this. So the core challenge we were looking at is balancing the speed of critical infrastructure development projects and consideration of historical and cultural sites. And the solution architecture that we've been working on the past year, it involves developing an AI deep researcher system along with Google Earth's AI models and AI world models to provide a comprehensive analysis and views of geospatial data, site records, and provide interactive simulations of that. The key components here is just sort of an abstraction here where we have the deep researcher systems that go out and does automated discovery of the data information based on your project plan, in this case the developer or the project proponent, and synthesizing that information along with the documents they submit, and then Google Alpha Earth as one of the key data sets. This is satellite imagery, and that's not the only data set we'd be using, but we'd be using multiple satellite data sets to not only enhance the existing survey data coming from the states and the localities, but also fill in the gaps. So along with that, an extension of that might be where once we have sufficiently enough data and we can model this well, is to address the problem of the sites that are not surveyed. So we're hoping we can do that in a second phase. And the way we're doing that is, or solving the challenge of having different data systems, data stored in different formats, not standardized across the board, is developing a specific semantic layer that translates between those different systems using AI. And also it makes the information more accurate and traceable through the AI. So there's safeguards in place to show provenance and traceability. So we can say, okay, factually, this is where the information was retrieved at this time, this is how it looked. So we can refer back to that. There's some unique architectures we had developed late 2024 about using graphs, knowledge graphs, to establish relationships between different pieces of information. That could be geographic data, site data, documents, or people being a key component of this. And this is especially important because as parts of the process, you might have access to data from the state locality and the federal agency, but, some unique circumstances or certain steps, that data might not be electronically available from the locality or the tribe, and you have to contact people, and the challenge of figuring out who to contact. So making that information available to you, identifying as a complete process, these are the people you need to contact, these are the typical timelines and where there might be a problem, and surfacing that. So I'll pass this back to Blythe.
Thanks. So just kind of to wrap up on this, we'll just some of the ways that we see the potential benefits stemming from the system, and really having that distributed across participants in the Section 106 realm, not simply for agencies. Of course, they do have that information research obligation, but this could also accrue benefits to states, tribes, and other preservation stakeholders by what it might accomplish. Things like allowing agencies or project proponents to target that needed new Section 106 identification work to the areas of greatest need, if they can identify that earlier, conserving limited agency resources, being more targeted in planning, which could also lead to better chances to avoid adverse effects if things are known early and in advance. Or what areas are of greatest concern potentially for the presence of unidentified properties. Can we flag that when siting decisions are being made? Agencies and their applicants can also plan for consultation with greater certainty, as Razor was mentioning, about potential issues and stakeholders that they may need to involve. And so thus we hope potentially to eliminate some of those friction points of inconsistency in the large projects, linear projects with initial research access available through a single system as opposed to multiple locations. So the availability of data, of course, will determine the range of benefits that the system can provide. And for instance, as Razor mentioned, where data layers may be available to show areas that have been surveyed in the past or not been surveyed. So those can add to utility as the system matures. Very quickly on next steps, as soon as the ACHP has the data science team that we plan to work with on board, the first step will be a data landscape survey to better understand what cultural resource data is available and in what form. That team will also reach out to key stakeholders to learn how they use the data so that we can make initial plans informed by that. Moving then to a rapid development of a proof of concept, which will help us and the development team understand what the system might look like and serve as a tool for additional reaction from stakeholders. We do plan to identify at least 3 partner agencies, such as SHPOs or federal agencies, or others, to partner with us in a pilot to test how their data is accessed via the AI-enabled system. And followed then by additional testing to refine that architecture. So the goal is to have, and this is a goal, so we'll share that timeframe with you, to have an initial version of the platform to soft launch in roughly 15 months, and we hope for public availability in approximately 18 months. And then, of course, as we mentioned, future expansion and inclusion of additional data layers can continue to enhance the utility of the platform. So the staff will keep members informed and updated through regular reports and our communications with you when we're sharing news of major initiatives. But with that, I will turn it back to Reed for closing comments, and both Razor and I are available should you have questions.
No, thank you, Blythe. That was great. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Hopefully y'all could see over my head during that presentation. That was why I was looking down, not the disinterest in the topic. I do want to, like she said, staff will keep members updated regularly, meetings, reports. If you have separate questions, feel free to reach out to them. I know we are past 12 o'clock here. If you need to leave, no problem. But I do want to open the floor if folks have questions, comments, based off the presentation today that they would like to raise.
Thank you, Ann Rains, Nick Schpo. I just want to add thanks to Blythe and Razor for their work sort of remolding, remodeling, renovating, and rehabilitating the idea of this project. I know that SHPO's had some concerns about it in its earlier iteration. I'm glad that the funds are still available, and we've met with the ACHP team about this already 1 or 2 times, and we want to make sure that the team that's working on this has adequate expectations about where SHPOs are with their data systems, because we are all over the map, from paper-based to very sophisticated online systems with GIS and with digital inventory forms. So we are actually planning on having ACHP join us in conjunction with our annual meeting, March 2nd, for a special sort of brainstorming, I guess, session with SHPOs where we can figure out where we have points of agreement and contentment on this. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ann. Any other questions, comments?
Ira Matt, NASPO. I'll try to keep these quick. First of all, I think this is wonderful work. Of course, every time Razor talks, it's a little above my pay grade on things, and Blythe always does great work. I think some of the things that Advisory Council needs to look at, as they already mentioned and they talked about, though, was, and a lot for the members, you guys are going to be gathering a lot of data, scraping data. It needs to be clear that it's not an endorsement of that data. Reed, you know this from work in Navajo Nation. So many things have been written about the tribes and shared around, and they'll bring it to us, and it's just completely not true. It's not factual about the positions tribes have. And a lot of the information out there, archaeological sites, these haven't been vetted with tribes to see if they're properties of religious or cultural significance. So I don't want this to be something where folks assume it's the end-all be-all and let's move on to the next step. And in particular, when you look back to that timeline I articulated earlier, we still got tribal preservation offices and cultural programs growing. So there's a lot of information that's just not out there in the record. And the concern a lot of tribes have is they're going to work with the available information. They're going to figure out appropriate corridors. They're going to avoid all of those other resources. And much like what already happens, they're going to come to tribes and say, where's your information? Well, we've already come to this consensus. We're already so far in planning, we're going to have to mitigate through what you consider important. So I think this ties back to that discussion on the regulations. How can we make sure that consultation, which a tool like this would create additional opportunity for meaningful consultation, can happen at a point in time where tribes are able to, even if it's not available in this, to provide information to consult so that it is taken into account and able to inform all of these opportunities to help avoid and minimize those impacts. So those are a few of the things that I wanted to bring up, more process-related, tied into somewhat else is happening, but to make sure this just doesn't run away from the groups that are probably the farthest away from being able to share their information in a lot of circumstances. But also, like Ann said, we have tribes that are extremely advanced, and I know the Seminole Tribe of Florida is around here somewhere. If not, I'll have their ears burned, but they have extensive platforms and work and experience in this arena that I think could help inform this effort. But that's it for me. Just wanted to share those thoughts and perspectives and look forward to supporting this effort as it goes forward.
Thanks, Ira. Any other comments, questions for the team?
I was just going to say, would you be sharing the slides and kind of the work afterwards with everybody as well?
I think we
Yeah,
can
to have
get
that
that
other
information and a summary, any other
okay.
information that would help you if you want to
Taking it
share
back to-
information in your
yes,
communities.
exactly.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I will just raise this in reflection of the comments earlier on council organization, flagging this as an opportunity if there's, extensive member engagement and desire to want to be more involved as they go through that timeline. This is, an example of something that we could consider for a separate kind of subcommittee group. So just throwing that out there. All right, so we will now move to the last item, new business, and luckily there is no new business, so we can move quickly through this. I will flag, we have scheduled our next two business meetings for June 3rd and 4th, and September 29th and 30th. So you should get more information on that. June 3rd and 4th, so similar to how, I don't even know what today's, 12th. So today's meeting was the 11th and 12th. In the future, June 3rd and 4th, September 29th and 30th.
And real quickly, as I provide follow-up information on this meeting, I will include in the email another reference to those dates. So if you didn't jot it down now, you'll hear it again soon. Yeah.
I don't think we need a motion to adjourn, do we? Motion to adjourn?
All right. So with that, we will adjourn. Thank you for the time today and being with me in my relearning of Robert's rules.